So there are over 400 different types of dementia. And while dementia itself is not a disease, there are some diseases such as Alzheimer's which cause it. So sometimes different types of dementia are present in a patient at the same time. It's a mixed dementia. Kind of country. I don't know how to say this exactly, and I make up a lot of words anyway, and these are difficult. So posterior cortical atrophy, PCA, refers to gradual and progressive degeneration of the outer layer of the brain. That's the cortex, and the part of the brain located in the back of the head, the posterior. Anyway, aka Benson syndrome. PCA is most usually considered to be an unusual or atypical variant of Alzheimer's disease, and that is at least one of the issues that we think mother has. Unfortunately for us, being told that we won't probably know for sure until an autopsy. So, the first symptoms of PCA occur when people are, unfortunately, in their mid-50s or early 60s, which is what happened to Mom. However, the first signs are subtle, and so it may be some time before a formal diagnosis is made, or like years like us. But despite being caused by the same process as Alzheimer's, the effects of PCA and typical Alzheimer's disease can be different. So typical ALS is most commonly associated with like your memory loss, right? People with PCA tend to have well-preserved memory, actually, and language, but instead they show this dramatic, progressive, and relatively selective decline in visual processing and literacy skills. Like Mom, she has a really difficult time communicating now. She can no longer do puzzles, crossword puzzles. She used to do those all the time, as well as the ones, 1,000 pieces on the table. She doesn't play bingo with everybody anymore. She can't really even process a movie because visually she can't see it. So maybe an audio book would work. I haven't really tried that, but she does love music. So people with PCA tend to have a relatively well-preserved memory, which is really good and bad, I guess, because it's kind of like, how much do they really realize what's going on here? So symptoms of PCA are things like difficulties with letters, numbers, words, communication, the ability to make skilled movements may be among some of the first symptoms noticed as well. In the library, which is where my mother worked right before she retired due to her issues, she was having a hard time. I'd have to call her boss up and ask her, what all they noticed, but placing books alphabetically back in the right place. Email all of a sudden was a little bit more difficult. Even just handwriting and typing becomes difficult. Remembering shapes or names. I get stressed out dealing with money. Kitchen silverware was one of the main things that we've had issues with, but she quit using the microwave, the oven. She stopped using remote controls and stuff like that early on too, because it just became confusing. And then you might notice problems dressing and getting yourself put together in the morning because your vision's going and you get confused. And understandably, a lot of people consult an eye specialist a lot in the beginning because they're like, oh, my eyes. And we did that. Mom saw the eye doctor so many times. She had cataract surgery in both eyes. We were always trying to figure out what's going on and, getting her new glasses. And then the glasses weren't seemingly helping. But at the time, we didn't know anything about this. Recognizing faces, whether it's your favorite television characters or your relatives, doesn't mean that they don't know you when you speak, but yeah, they can't see you. The space between objects, like if you're reaching to pick something up or whatever, or maybe there's a stair coming up, the depth, all of that gets really scary. Mom's had that issue for a long time now. She currently has a major issue when she's trying to eat. She's feeling for her cup and her plate. She's reaching out for things because she can kind of see it, but she kind of can't. Plus, she can't tell how far away it is, how high it is, how low it is, and finding her chair to sit in is difficult. It's a mess. And, judging speed. Also, is an issue. So if you think about, if you have some distance issues and depth and spacing issues plus speed issues, then driving a car is an issue. So she lost her license a long time ago. They have sensitivity to bright lights, shiny surfaces. If we are eating next to a window that's open, it's very difficult for mom to see anyway, and now it's even harder for her to see. That's one reason she doesn't like to go outside. She used to love to be outside, but she doesn't like to go outside because certain lights hurt her eyes. So PCA definitely affects people in different ways initially. Over time, it definitely gets worse, and they do start to see some of your typical Alzheimer's symptoms. But she did have all of this begin in her early to mid 50s, and now she's 69, so almost 70. And I feel like everything that I've done for her has probably slowed down her progression. And I don't know if that's good or bad. Do we really want to slow this down or not if there's nothing that we can actually do about it? It's been very difficult, and I definitely have had to talk to a therapist and some support groups myself because it's just hard. Early visual complaints are typically referred to eye specialists before you go to a neurologist. Problems with spelling, numbers, motor skills, all of those things that are reported. Now, those things go for a while usually before anybody decides to go to some sort of doctor. And we went to a neurologist pretty early on and had her tested, and she just, failed all these tests across the board, and they still couldn't quite make sense of it all, but they knew that she was showing some sort of like neurocognitive decline. It was a confusing situation because they're like, well, is this psych or is this neuro or is it a bit of both? And everybody seemed to agree across the board that it was a bit of both, but without knowing that it was PCA, couldn't really put all the pieces together. And now we are putting all the pieces together because somebody who has PCA that's not completely out of it memory-wise, there may be a lot that she's comprehending that we assumed that she wasn't comprehending, and therefore she may understand more than we think she understands about her current situation. She's not able to communicate it clearly to us. It's like a child that can't quite talk yet that wants to throw a tantrum, and that's very frustrating. It causes a lot of depression and stuff like that. So that's where she has to be treated with depression meds as well as some neuro meds because she's sad, she's upset, she's anxious, she's scared, and that completely makes sense. I mean, some of us without PCA need those things because we're scared, about things that aren't quite as scary if we were going to weigh them out, but we won't weigh them out, okay? So anyway, there's a ton of different tests that you can do, neuropsych test. And I mean, from lab tests to brain imaging to a spinal. There, of course, are no specific medications for the treatment of PCA. But some people do find medications for ALS pretty helpful. And I will share with you some of the things that I've used and found in another chat. She still shows relatively preserved insight, and she's got a lot of her humor and stuff like that left. She just has no independence anymore. And because of her vision and all of that, her daily living and her activities, just her quality of life has been compromised. And that takes out the enjoyment, of all of her previous hobbies. And that's what leads to the depression and, her being irritable and frustrated and anxious and having a loss of self-confidence. And now that she's seemingly blind, we're having to try to figure out, what to do with that. It's very, very difficult. But that's what PCA is. So hopefully you learned a little something. Thank you for taking the time to learn about something new. And if you're experiencing this, I'm so, so sorry. So sorry. There are support groups out there if you need them. So I'm going to send you good vibes. And if you feel sad, please try to remember to embrace being alive and smile. It looks good on you.